Hey, what is going on, guys? Jake Virgin Tech here, back with another video, and today we are going to be talking about the Nintendo Switch OLED model that I picked up recently. I've done a couple videos on it, but today we are going into kind of my overall impressions after gaming on this for a few weeks now, and going into an overall review. With its release date in October of 2021, the Nintendo Switch OLED has been out for about 6 months now. And just recently, I've noticed the availability has been quite a bit better than we've seen previously, both in stores and online. So I decided to pick up one of these for myself, upgrading from my Nintendo Switch, the version 1 model, and seeing this console in its newest refined form. With that being said, and there already are a bunch of reviews out there on the Nintendo Switch OLED model, in this video, I really wanted to talk about, is this console worth upgrading to? If you have a previous version of the Nintendo Switch, or maybe Switch Lite, is it worth the upgrade? And even though many questions have already been answered about this console, we are going to go over some of the key differences between the previous version of the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch OLED model. So diving straight into this, guys, I have the specs laid out for the OLED model Switch and the regular Switch, either the version 1 or version 2. On paper side by side, so you can kind of get a feel of the main things we're going to be talking about when it comes to the differences between these two iterations of the Switch. The biggest, most obvious one is going to be the OLED display on the new OLED Switch, hence the title of this console. So it is a 7-inch OLED display, still with a 720p resolution versus the 6.2-inch display we had on the original Switch. Onboard storage has been bumped up a little bit out of the box. As you can see, the OLED model does have 64 gigs of onboard storage, while on the version 1 Switch, we did only have 32 gigs. Not a super hyped stat, just because you obviously are going to be adding a micro SD card of some sort, and you can get quite expansive with storage when it comes to that. So the onboard storage really isn't a big deal, but it's nice to see a little bit of an upgrade there. The battery life on paper is 4.5 to 9 hours, which is the same as the original Switch. We're going to talk more on this later, as I think my experiences do differ quite a bit from the paper stats. And we have some more cosmetic updates, I would say. We have an updated kickstand, an updated dock, which does have some different features. And in quotes, I put enhanced audio, as they did say in the release video that there is enhanced audio, or maybe a different type of speaker they're using. Since it was in the release video, I figured I would note it here as well. So taking a look at these specs a little bit more in depth, we're going to take a look at the most obvious upgrade, which is that beautiful 7-inch OLED display, which is a super nice upgrade coming from the version 1 Switch. Although this isn't the upgrade or the Switch Pro that many had hoped for, this OLED display is a fantastic upgrade in my opinion. The larger 7-inch OLED display makes a big difference just in overall size. It's really refreshing not seeing those thick black bezels around the corners of the screen, as they're much more slimmed down, and the screen pretty much takes up the entire surface area of the actual console. Even with the Nintendo Switch OLED rocking the same 720p resolution that you would find on a version 1 Switch, the OLED display just really brings in a much different picture quality. OLED displays just have naturally better display qualities, such as better contrast, higher brightnesses. You will have some better viewing angles with no artifacting when viewing from the sides. And the most notable one is the wider color range that OLED provides, which I feel like is what we see the most when gaming on the OLED Switch. And another great feature of OLED, especially when it comes to handheld devices like this OLED Switch, is the lower power consumption when running an OLED display, which in the case of handheld gaming on the Switch will result in better battery life. As far as the viewing experience, as mentioned, the colors are just so punchy, super vibrant. It just has such a clean look to it. I've really enjoyed playing different Mario titles like Mario Galaxy in the 3D All-Stars pack. And I have played a little bit of Mario Kart, and all these titles just look so good. And other games like Animal Crossing is a great experience as well too. Really anything you play on this OLED Switch is going to look fantastic, even when it comes to the more graphically simple titles. As I mentioned, the Nintendo Switch OLED does come with 64 gigabytes of onboard storage. Not a huge deal, but it is an upgrade from the original 32 gigs that you would get on the Nintendo Switch console. I think this upgrade is worth mentioning for a new Nintendo Switch buyer who doesn't currently have a Switch. Most people I know that have a Switch do run a micro SD card, as they are pretty inexpensive and you can get quite a bit more storage. But the extra 64 gigs, or extra 32 gigs rather, on the OLED model Switch is a nice little upgrade, given that most first-party titles are going to be around 8 gigabytes. Another very notable upgrade to the Nintendo Switch OLED is the new refined kickstand. This one actually stretches from the whole width of the body of the Nintendo Switch and is way sturdier and has a much nicer feel. The previous kickstand, well, I wouldn't even call it a kickstand. I think it's just more of an SD card slot cover per se, but I definitely wouldn't trust it. I know I've used it a couple times and my Switch has fallen over the few times that I've used it. As the great Joey Diaz would say, don't worry about it, because the new kickstand on the OLED Nintendo Switch is actually functional as a kickstand. It's really solid, and I could definitely see using this one for tabletop gaming. The dock is something that I feel like can be very overlooked when thinking in terms of the Nintendo Switch. And I think in this case for the OLED Nintendo Switch, they really did a good job upgrading the dock. It is very refined with a fresh new look, and it does have some new added features. As far as performance goes, it's the exact same. You still get a 1080p resolution output when the Switch is in docked mode, but the dock for the Nintendo Switch OLED comes in with a sleeker look and some different ports. On the inside or the back side of the dock, we used to have a USB 3.0 port, but this has been swapped out for an onboard Ethernet port. I think this is a great touch, just including this on board in the Nintendo Switch dock. As before, like myself and many others, we would just use a USB 3.0 to a Ethernet adapter and have it plugged into that port on the back side. So it's kind of nice in this case. The dock just has it built in and you don't have to use an adapter anymore. And if you are concerned about having USB ports, there still are the 2 USB ports on the front. The rear cover comes off completely instead of being hinged, and I feel like the ports are much easier to access, as I do switch my HDMI quite a bit going to my capture card. I'm always switching it between my Switch and my Xbox Series S, and I've just found this one to be a lot easier to connect, and I think the placement's a lot better. One thing that I haven't heard anybody mention is the overall texture on the inside where you actually insert the Nintendo Switch. On the new refined dock, it's a lot smoother plastic opposed to the old version 1 or the original Switch dock, as that was a lot more textured, and it was notorious for scratching the screen on your Nintendo Switch. That's why many would recommend a screen protector. I would still recommend using a screen protector on your OLED Switch, but I gotta say, with the new dock having that much smoother plastic on the inside, I think it would be much less prone to scratches. Talking about battery life, I've seen a big improvement when it comes to handheld gaming on the OLED Switch versus my original Switch, and this could be from a combination of things. One, the OLED display being much more power efficient, and another being that this battery is a little bit more updated from my version 1 Switch. But overall, I can definitely tell that the battery life is a lot better. I know sometimes in the morning I'll just play my Switch in handheld for usually like an hour, hour and a half. And I remember my original Switch would get down battery percentage wise to around 82% just after an hour of gameplay. So it would lose like anywhere from 15 to 20% battery life. And on the OLED Switch, I found I'm only losing about 8 to 10% of battery life just gaming on it for about an hour, hour and a half, which has me noticing it is a great improvement. So that is going to wrap up this video, guys. Thank you for checking this one out. Even though, like I said, I'm way late to the game when it comes to the Nintendo Switch OLED model, I really wanted to kind of give my take on this console and my experience gaming on it, and whether or not it's worth the upgrade. I think for somebody that is new to the Switch game and doesn't currently own a Nintendo Switch, I would definitely sway them towards the Nintendo Switch OLED model, as it's the latest and greatest right now when it comes to this particular hardware. As far as the Nintendo Switch goes, it's the most refined form, so I would probably steer them more towards that direction. Unless they want to play a full handheld experience, then the Switch Lite is probably a little bit better as far as comfort goes. And then for those of you that are coming from a version 1 Switch like myself, whether or not it's worth the upgrade, I think it kind of depends. If you are a Nintendo Switch user that plays the console docked either 90 or 100% of the time, I'd say it probably isn't worth the extra money to upgrade to this console, just because you really don't get any added features. Almost all the features that are added to the Nintendo Switch OLED model are pretty much only features that you'll experience in handheld mode. But if you are somebody that plays either 50-50 or even like 60-40, where you're playing docked 60% of the time and then the other 40% of the time you're playing in handheld, I think it could be worth it for somebody like that. And that's kind of the range that I'm in. I'm either 50-50 or 60-40, whether or not I'm playing docked or handheld. And it is an absolutely fantastic experience in handheld mode. If you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful, make sure to drop a like on it. And if you want to see more tech related videos like this one, be sure to subscribe. As always, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.